So we're going live now.
Good morning and welcome to our special event. This event is coming live to you, albeit a little bit late, and via audio today. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Trafford College Group to this interview with special event. And in order to make the introductions, I'm going to invite our Deputy Principal, Carmen Gonzalez Eslava, to make the necessary introductions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to have you all here today. So we are delighted that to be able to host this event, and we very much thanks our special hosts. So the Trafford College Group, we are extremely committed to community cohesion, and as part of that, we share the common goal as the We Stand Together initiative, set up by the Greater Manchester Police and co-designed by our very special guest, Chief Superintendent of Greater Manchester, Umer Khan. Just before we go into the questions, I'd like to just say something about who Umer Khan's background and biography. So Umer Khan OBE was born and raised in a remote little village in northern Pakistan initially, where he helped his grandfather worked in the farmland. At the age of 11, him and his family emigrated to Old Trafford in Manchester, which of course, was really exciting at the time, but of course also a confusing time for him and his siblings, especially as he knew only too well that for him to succeed in his new homeland, he would have to learn a new language and become accustomed to a new way of life, to the British way of life. At the age of 21, he took a leap of faith and joined the Greater Manchester Police, and with great determination and hard work, he gained grounding as the police constable and then became a detective. He went to successfully pass his promotion and was appointed as sergeant in Oldham. And from 2009, he progressed on to working in Rochdale as a response and neighbourhood policing inspector, where and following the terrorist attacks in Europe and Manchester, Umar led on the We Stand Together campaign and has been instrumental in establishing this as a charity committed to celebrating difference, countering hate, terrorism and extremism, and was adopted as the national cohesion message for unity following the high-profile terror attacks. In January 2019, Umar was awarded as an OBE by Her Majesty the Queen, and in his own words, this was surely one of the proudest moments of his life, and a real highlight, especially considering his very, very humble beginnings, and something that he talks about how proud his parents and the people of Pakistan were of this great achievement. He has been this OBE recognized, the exceptional contribution towards society at a very, very difficult time. Umar has held a number of senior roles, and across the city of Manchester, and has commanded a large area of at least 4 different police forces. In his current role for local policing, he is responsible for criminal justice, custody, neighbourhoods and communities, which provides him with the immense opportunities to continue to bring communities together even through the COVID pandemic. Having experienced childhood poverty in Pakistan and recognizing the contrasting opportunity for personal and professional growth that the UK provided, it has taught Umar to be extremely thankful and appreciative of life. I'm surprised, but Umar still finds time, outside of work, to work with a number of charities, that has taken into countries such as Pakistan and Ethiopia to transform villages and support local communities. And he's got, a keen interest in cricket, something that he has supported for the last 10 years. So without further ado, I'd like to very much thank him for joining us today. He's obviously extremely busy and extremely responsible job, and to make time to meet us today, of course, is a great honor for all of us. I'm going to invite our students to now introduce themselves, our panel of students, to introduce themselves first, and then we're going to move into questions. So I think, Abigail, are you going first?
I think we might not have Abigail on the call at the moment. So I think, Chloe, you're first. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Chloe. I go to Cheadle College and I study law and psychology.
Okay, and then we've got Dion.
Hi, I'm Dion. I study Level 3 Applied Science and I'm a member of the Equalities Council at Trafford College.
And then we've got Alita.
Hi, I'm Alita. I go to Cheadle College. I do psychology, photography and law.
Okay, and then we've got Shabab.
Hi everyone, I'm Shabab. I go to Trafford College in the Altrincham campus and I'm a member of the Equalities Council.
Okay, thanks for that, Shabab. We do have another student who will be with us presently, so when she arrives, she can introduce herself too. Okay, we're going to go to Chloe first for your questions. So Chloe, would you like to ask your questions to our guest? You're on mute, Chloe.
Okay, do you think female officers are at more of a disadvantage than male officers in terms of their career outcomes and how they are treated on the front line?
Hi, Umar, did you get to hear that question, or shall we get Chloe to repeat?
Yeah, I was trying to join in live, but I'm not making any joy, so I'm back on the phone line again. So I missed that last question. So Chloe, you want to ask that question, and then I'm with you then.
Okay, Chloe.
Do you think female officers are at more of a disadvantage than male officers in terms of their career outcomes and how they're treated on the front line?
Okay, first of all, good morning to everybody, and I do apologise for the technical issues this morning. This is 21st century, but technology, it's the same everywhere. In our organisation, we have the same issues and challenges, but I want to thank everybody in terms of your time, your patience, and I want to thank all the staff who've been working very hard to put this event on. But better late than never. So in terms of the question, really good question. Interestingly, when I joined in 1995 as a police officer, I was on my assessment centre asked this very similar question, and the question was that should women have a role in policing? And that was a really interesting question, and it was there to challenge us in our thinking, and it also showed the thinking back in 95 around the gender disparities that existed. What I would say is that in terms of the gender disparities in policing, we've come a long way in the last 20, 25 years. So for example, our recent recruitment, we have been able to recruit up to 50% of our intakes as female colleagues. I personally, in terms of the work that our female colleagues do not believe that they are in any way less effective as officers in whatsoever because of the diversity of the work we do. My tutor was a female colleague, and she taught me everything I came to know in the first instances. But moving forward, we've got to accept that there are inequalities that exist within the system, within society, where women and females are treated less favourably often in many fields. And so the Equality Act, which came into force a couple of years back, has made great improvements in terms of ensuring that there is no detriment experienced by people with protected characteristics in that regard. So in simple terms, in policing, we have made great strides in ensuring that there is gender fairness and gender representation across our ranks. And we're getting so many more female colleagues who are now chief officers of across the different, the commissioner for the Met is also a female colleague, and we've got so many new chief constables. So we're making great strides in there. But in essence of your question is there a disadvantage? I would say yes, that the disadvantage continue to exist for women as well as members of other protected characteristic groups. I hope that kind of like gives you a summary of an answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Chloe, have you got your second question now?
Yeah. I was just wondering, is it mandatory for police officers to sometimes patrol on their own, or is there an option to be patrolling with another officer?
Okay, that's another good question. So there is no law or there's no rules as to whether officers need to be patrolling alone or in combinations. So when I first joined again, I did a lot of walking on the beat. I'm more like a traditional officer, so I did a lot of walking around town centres and different places, and you walk by yourself, and it helped build confidence. It helped build the ability to speak to people. Then on nights, and after a certain time, around about after 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, then we used to get teamed up because the sort of incidents that you will attend after 1 o'clock in the morning would be very different. Often they will involve thieves on, or maybe domestic incidents where you needed more than one person. This particular theme is a question that's raised by Federation, which is the body that represents police officers, as in their union type thing, and they do encourage double crewing, as the term goes, but we still, because of the shortage of staff and officers, and then I don't want to go into a long monologue, because austerity has seen Greater Manchester Police go from having 8,000 police officers to around just over 6,000 police officers. And the demand that comes into policing has not really changed. So as a consequence, we cannot afford to have officers double teamed. So we need officers working single crewed more often than not. But this remains as a point of debate. But to answer your question, there is no rules or policies to say people have to either work by themselves or in teams. It's just dependent on resources and risks that we face. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to be moving on to Dion in a second, but we have got our additional panellist. So I'm just going to ask our additional panellist to come and introduce herself.
Hello everyone, my name is Uswa Sayed and I'm a student representative and a member of Equalities Council at Stockport College.
Hello.
Okay, so can we move on to Dion for your questions? So Dion, would you like to address your first question?
Yes, I will. Hi, Umer. With instances of violent crime increasing, how do you propose to keep young people off the streets to prevent violent offences?
Hi, Dion. Thank you for your good question. So if I just give a bit of a context, over the recent years, we have seen knife crime and instances of knife crime which have often involved young people. And the victims of knife crime have also been often young people under the age of 25, and more often than not, 75% of the time they're being males. So clearly that we have got a challenge around young people being offenders of violence in terms of knife crimes, and also having young people as the victims of knife crimes as well. In relation to the traditional policing approaches, the police often focused on enforcement as a mechanism of control, which then has led to breakdown in relationships with young people, because young people then see policing as an extension of their parents at the very lowest form, and at worst they will probably see police as a oppressive organization. So policing has had to take a hard look at itself to say, how do we address that issue? But we also address the issue of trust and confidence in our relationship with young people. So what we have done in Greater Manchester Police over the last few years, that we've had the violence reduction unit that has been established, and that looks at two levels really. One is, how do we work with our partner agencies? That includes our health partners, our colleges, schools, education, and so on and so forth. Because what I want to highlight here is that both my experiences and my journey in life, what I have seen is that often people who end up in criminality or in the criminal justice system have often suffered themselves. Either they come from a disadvantaged or impoverished background, or they have had deprivation or inequalities in their life. So as a consequence, they get pushed into the criminal justice system. And too often the debate then tends to be that interaction with them and the police and the criminal justice system, and not really why did those people end up in that place. So the violence reduction unit work that we're doing with our partners is looking at what we call early intervention and a public health approach, which is really looking at journey of young people as they enter schooling, through the school years, early life, and making sure that we pick up those opportunities with young people to prevent them falling into the net of criminal justice. So that's one element. And the second element is actually then doing that, what we call, so it's, the public health is in three parts. It's the primary, secondary, and tertiary. So primary is that early health, the early years of schooling and those parts of the system where we can do prevention. Secondary is when people begin to come into that early contact at teenage years, you know, ASB issues, where we can do some work with them through youth services. And the tertiary is where young people end up in the getting arrested and getting into the criminal justice system, so that where we can do further work with them to prevent them becoming criminalized, because we don't want that to happen. And then, you know, we've seen some horrible and terrible cases. For example, you know, in Trafford, we've had in one of the schools a young person who was stabbed, and, you know, it's still a very big and sore issues across society in terms of the outcome in courts and around that case. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour as to how the policing is trying to look at its approach with dealing with young people, and especially the issue around violence. We're not nowhere near where we want to be, but we're actually trying to make progress in that area. I hope that gives you a bit of an overview.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, Dion, do you want to ask your next question?
Yeah, I shall. What measures are you going to take to increase community cohesion throughout Greater Manchester?
So if I just talk about some of the headwinds which are challenging our community cohesion, I put them down into, say, three categories really. And I won't do a long monologue, honestly, but austerity has a massive impact on our cohesion. Brexit has had a massive impact, and COVID, which has had a massive impact. So let me explain. So austerity, which has been going on for the last 10, 15 years, following the world sort of financial crisis, which I mentioned about how our policing and public services have been cut, 20% cuts in public services. So what it meant is that services that would exist in local authorities, youth services, all those areas have not been there to do some engagement work with communities and young people. But behind it, there has been this issue of inequalities, which is the theme that's come through Brexit and the theme that's come through COVID, where inequalities across society have been laid bare, and this is what I'm passionate about. And so the inequalities that exist in society are in different levels. So I call them vertical and horizontal inequalities. So they include, for example, systemic inequality. So where you're born into the society, that if you're born as a somebody, as you know, the question was asked about females, gender inequality that exists. So, for example, race inequality, that's a massive issue through the Black Lives Matters and other instances we've had. We have disabilities inequalities. We've got inequality in terms of you're born in, say, certain area of Manchester, your life chances are more or less favourable than if you're born into a different part of Manchester. If you're born into a good household, that's a lottery. You know, we don't choose to be born where we're born into. So as a consequence of these inequalities, we have seen over the last sort of period things like protests in the streets around the lockdowns. We've seen protests around the government. We've seen protests around Brexit. Over this weekend, we've had protests around what's been happening in different parts of the world. We've had Manchester Arena terror attack, which is the biggest attack in post-war UK, and the lives it lost and the divisions it cost. And we had multiple instances after that terror attack of where hate crime in society increased over 600%, where the divisions became embedded. So in summary, what extremists and terrorists, whichever side of the divide they are from, they want to do three things in my analysis. One is that they want to cause maximum indiscriminate damage and harm to people through their attacks. Secondly, they want to sow the seeds of hatred and divisions in society, which is then fulfills their work they want to do. And thirdly, that they want those divisions then lead to further acts of hate and further down violence and terror. So in Manchester, for example, if we take Manchester Arena as a terror attack, that was absolutely horrific, and we just did a memorial this weekend. But afterwards, we saw examples of that hate crime where people began to other and target one another. But this is where the response of Greater Manchester communities with a We Stand Together campaign, which was to say we will not give in to extremists and terrorists, we will not give in to hate, and all those events and activities that took place across society, the peace concert, the We Stand Together demonstrations and peace events, they were so important because they maintain the cohesion. And what cohesion is, the ability of different people from different backgrounds to coexist with respect and understanding. And ultimately, that's the goal that we want to move towards. Sorry for a very long-winded answer, but I hope it gives you a bit of an overview.
You happy with that, Dion?
I am, thank you, Umer.
Yeah. And Umar, just to say that as the Trafford College Group are proud as well to be affiliated with the hashtag We Stand Together initiative set up by GMP, and you know this event is representative of that. So we're moving on to Alita now from Cheadle College. So Alita, would you like to address your question, please?
Yeah, so my first question is, following the Sarah Everard case, the arrest was a servicing police officer, and so I wanted to know what measures have been put in place to make sure effective recruitment takes place for the police force and so that the community feels protected.
Thank you for asking that really powerful question. And Sarah Everard's case in the Met, unfortunately, is one of many instances of violence against women and girls that takes place, and that particular case clearly caught the headlines. Unfortunately, violence against women is an everyday occurrence that takes place across society and nationally. And one of my own colleagues from the Met, a female PCSO, was murdered recently, and that case didn't attract the same level of media attention, but nevertheless she was also somebody's partner, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter. What these cases highlight is the fact that society and policing and partners and everyone need to do more to protect women and girls in society. So what we have got is, in isolation, good practices. Over the 27 years that I've been a police officer, I've seen improvements in the way we do respond to domestic abuse. That work has evolved quite drastically. We've seen great progress in terms of how we deal with serious sexual offences. We've seen great progress in terms of the way that we deal with harassment and other offences, but we've been doing that in isolation. So what we have done now in Greater Manchester is that, and that if you guys get a chance to do a Google on the gender strategy, so it's the gender-based strategy, which went out for consultation a month or two ago, and the consultation, I believe, is either ended or due to end. Welcome to have a look at it and give your contributions. But I assisted in pulling together that strategy, and that strategy is looking at a whole societal response to how we protect gender-based challenges and threats, but primarily focus on women and girls who are disproportionately featuring as victims of those violences. We have got instances of where males are also victims, but the vast majority is often women and girls, and this is where we are focusing our efforts on. So that strategy is available, but I'm more than happy if there's a follow-up that you would like to learn more, that I can arrange either a meeting for you to meet some of our colleagues who work in this arena, and maybe some of our officers who work in what we call our public protection unit, which focuses their efforts primarily on this area.
Okay, Alita, great opportunity there if you get to meet some of Umar's colleagues there. Have you got your second question ready?
Yeah, so I wanted to know if there are any careers in the police force that don't involve working on the front line, so like in an office, for example.
Okay, absolutely, and this question has not been planned at all, by the way. So I'm glad that you've asked me this question. So we have got a fantastic range of opportunities and careers. So on our website, which is www.gmppolice.co.uk, we have a recruitment section that talks about recruitment. But one of the things we are recruiting is around apprentices and apprenticeships we're offering to young people who are looking for a career, not in police uniform services, but actually police support roles. And I'm pleased that in my department, I have, seen many 20, 30 apprentices at different times who have progressed from those roles into other back office support roles. So our police force previously, as I mentioned, we had 8,000 police officers and 4,000 or 5,000 police staff. Cuts meant we lost 2,000 police officers, 1,000 non-uniform colleagues, but now we're looking to start strengthening those areas. So we have got roles in forensic services, we've got roles in call handling, we've got roles in criminal justice environment, we have force solicitors, we have all manner of roles from our fleet, vehicle fleets, we have mechanics, we have people who look after our horses and our dogs. So all manner of support roles, which enables frontline policing to take place. So again, if colleagues are interested, what I will do with host Michelle today is to share those opportunities as and when they come forward. And there's also volunteering opportunities like through the special constabulary. So as you get to that age of 18, 19 and you want some experiences before you're not really sure what the police for you, but you've got that little buzz inside you that you want to sample it. So maybe doing a special constabulary voluntary constable role where it involves a couple of hours a month, where you get a full uniform and you get a proper, you know, the warrant and everything to go with it. You have all the powers, but you just do it on a voluntary basis until you decide this is for you or not. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Are you impressed with that, Alita?
Yes, thank you.
You are, and has that driven you forward that you want to carry on with what you hope to do with the police force?
Yeah, I'm more interested now.
Okay, we'll get all that information from Umar. Thank you, Umar, for that one. I'm going to move on now to Shabab. Shabab's got some questions for you. So, Shabab, would you like to address your questions now?
Hi. According to an HMIC report, about 220 crimes a day went unrecorded in the year up to June 2020. What measures have been put in place to address this issue?
Yes, Shabab, thank you for that question. I did say I'm going to get you a job in HMIC after you're done at college and uni. For the benefit of people listening, the HMIC is the Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary. They're the examination or the body for policing. So they're the equivalent of the CQC, who does the sections of education and other environments. So as Bob has said rightly, that GMP in our inspection of our crime incident management and crime recording, that we were found to be failing in many areas and failing victims. So what we have done is that we've had a 3-month and a 6-month action plan, and that action plan has been driven with the support of HMIC and Home Office. I'm actually the lead for engagement, which is the way we've been engaging with our victims groups and our wider partners. For example, last evening I didn't finish till about 8-9 because I had a community meetings with our independent advisory groups. So just been keeping people updated. So what we are doing is we set up a hotline in the first instance for anybody who's been a victim of crime and they weren't satisfied with the response they received, and how we then remedy that. But if I'm being honest, the challenge here is around supply and demand. The demand on policing has increased substantially, and I mentioned the fact that we lost 20% of our resources. And what we are grappling with in Greater Manchester Police is that conundrum of how do we do more with less, and because we've got, as the questions have shown, really fantastic questions, and shows how well aware that yourselves as a membership are, young people are, of the stuff that's happening. So we've got expectations around protecting our vulnerable people. We've got pressures around equalities. We have protests every weekend. Hate crime is increasing, and people are concerned about violence on the streets of young people. And then also people want to expect a better response from police when the shed is broken, or there's the car's been damaged, or there's been a theft of some instances. So these are the pressures that we as a police service have to grapple and find solutions for. And this is why I hope that you good people like yourselves will join us in the future and bring your creativity to bear and help us find the solutions, because let's not forget, the police are part of the society. And if I may say that Robert Peel, who in 1829 came with the 9 principles for policing, and one of the fantastic things about British policing is that those 9 principles, over 200 years later, still remain as true as they were. So one of the big and the best principle is that the police are the community and the community are the police. So this challenge is a collective challenge. Is how do we ensure that our police is able to meet the demands of our public? And I feel that in Greater Manchester, we've been struggling to do that. We've been found to be failing in relation to our response to victims around crime. Our new Chief Constable has started yesterday, and I had the pleasure of meeting him yesterday. and he is going to be making quite a few announcements around restructure, around, it's like having a new football manager come in, and you know, new things, and new training regimes, and new this and new that. So there's an exciting time and both a challenging time for us, and hopefully that responds with a new Chief Constable in Greater Manchester Police, and you know, our commitment will help improve the way we respond to victims, and hopefully improve our service to people out there who need us when they need us.
Thank you very much for that answer.
That was a comprehensive answer. Are we happy with that, Shabab?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, do you want to move on to your second question then?
Yes, my second question is, what are some adversities that you have faced in the GMP as an immigrant who is also a person of color?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I'm not going to go too long with it, but in terms of challenges or barriers or whatever we want to call them, I guess we all as human beings, and people on the call here, students here, we all have our own particular unique issues and challenges that we have to live with, we have to overcome, and that could range from being having somebody who is having a protected characteristic of a disability, somebody who could be a female, somebody who could have a race, you know, from a minority community, somebody who might have a family member who lives with mental health issues, language barriers. All I'll say is I've experienced most of the things that you can think of. So I came I suffered discrimination as a family when we were young and living in Pakistan, because we were from the village. And when we came to live in the city folk didn't accept us. And that's part of the reason why my father, who was working abroad, then decided to bring us over to join him here in the UK. So when we came here, so I couldn't speak the language. So going to primary, secondary school, you know, taking the mickey taken out, bullying, all that sort of stuff, you experience it. And then as you grow older, you're not getting jobs because you don't have, you know, the right accent or the right whatever. So all I'll say is that I didn't really know that there were challenges or barriers. Because my mindset was that you didn't have a choice. You had to find solutions. If you couldn't get a job in one place, you went to another place, and you never given up. So as a reflection on my journey, all I'll say is that I guess what has helped me is the fact that I've never gave in. I've never admitted defeat. I never accepted no. I never accepted other people's judgments of me. And I always had this thing of, I'll show you, or I'll prove that person wrong. That can be quite tiring, but eventually what you then need to do is not prove other people wrong, but you need to be in a happy balance with who you are as a human being. And what I've learned to be is just to say, don't take notice of anybody's negative views about you, and just be who you are, do the right things for the right reasons, and everything else will follow in its place. And that's been my mantra in many ways. I know I can't please all of the people all of the time, but I know that as long as I live and do my best every day, then that's all that matters. The outcomes are not in my control. So what I'll say to yourselves is that you will have your challenges. So, you know, whether you are having a difficult time because of your family, you know, I've had a difficult time with my family. My mother has had mental health issues. My eldest sister has had mental health issues. My younger brother has had mental health issues, and he made poor choices in his life. So those challenges can drag you back, you know, but then you got to find that strength of getting out of that bed in the morning, getting into college, doing your assignments, doing your work. You got to do what you got to do to get through in life, really. So my advice to colleagues here is that challenges and barriers, they are opportunities to overcome. So if you look at the Olympics, which we learn and inspire from, it's that 10,000 meter steeplechase. It's got loads of barriers, it's got loads of hurdles, and the winner is the one who can overcome them and get to the finish line. And I think that's probably an analogy, that see barriers and see obstacles as an opportunity to test yourselves and prove yourself to yourselves, really, that you can overcome them. because other people have done it, so can you. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks Shabab for that. We do have Uswa now, who is going to ask her questions. So if we just give her a second to get here.
Hi, so my first question is, as we all know that the commitment to democratic values is a cornerstone of community policing. In your view, what values do you believe are core to protecting the community, and to what extent community policing and traditional policing differ from each other?
Okay. Also, that's a really powerful question. So the question, if I can break it down, is around the values around community policing and traditional policing. So if I just explain for colleagues listening in, what that means is that, so policing in itself often is seen as an enforcement entity, which is what we see around the world, around the police being enforcers of the law. And in order to do that, they have to use force, and that force is often not accepted by society. So we see in America massive challenges around how they use force. And, you know, just to give you an example, in America, more people are killed at the hands of the police in America in 1 year than there have been similar outcomes at the hands of the British police throughout the whole history of British policing. So just let me repeat that. More people are killed at the hands of the American police in 1 year than numbers who are being killed by British policing throughout their whole history. So what are the reasons for it? So first of all, British policing, our values I mentioned are built on the Peelian principles. Sir Robert Peel, 1829, amazing character, Home Secretary, Prime Minister, responsible for a lot of reform in his time. And one of the reforms was around creation of the Metropolitan Police. The concept of bobbies or the peelers comes from that time, because the Peelian principles. So the Peelian principles talk about the police are the community and the community are the police, which means that the community needs to be representative of the police, which is something that we're striving for even to this day. So this is why I encourage young people from different backgrounds, whether you are female, male, or person of colour, or person from a minority community, we encourage you to come and join the police because of that principle. The police are the community and the community are the police. The second principle, the value the British policing is built on, is that we police by consent. So that is a really important principle. Policing by consent is not that, what a police officer will go on the street and say, excuse me, can I have your consent? So I'm going to arrest you. No, that consent is the bit that we do what the public broadly accepts of us. So we don't carry guns, for example, because our public do not expect us to carry guns. We have office specialists who carry guns, but we bring them in on specialist incidents dependent on intelligence and threat. So we are not armed in that regard. We also police by consent because of the fact that we need to secure the cooperation of the public. If we don't have that cooperation in the way we do what we do, we will then have breakdown. And we have experienced that in our history. For example, in Greater Manchester in the 80s, we've had riots in areas like Moss Side. Then I'm doing an interview tomorrow with the BBC for 20 years on following the Oldham riots. So I'm doing a selections of what we learned after those Oldham riots, for which I was part of the response in that area. And often that breakdown in trust as a value and confidence as a value leads to the non-acceptance of policing. So all you then need is police to go into an area, arrest somebody, and the whole community then do an uprising against the police and then cause disorder. And that's the consequences of where the value of policing by consent breaks down. So in terms of the differences then, I absolutely believe in community policing as in neighbourhood policing. And neighbourhood policing for me is around building good relationships at the community level with communities, with partners to address local problems, to problem solve, to have community meetings, to listen to people's concerns. So last night I didn't finish till late because I had a meeting with the Forced Independent Advisory Group. I have been working for the last 3 months to establish what I call scrutiny panels or stop search across each of the 10 GM boroughs, and that's been those people who follow me on Twitter or whatever, they will have probably seen the adverts I've been sending out. I've shared some with the staff here to share with pupils if they were interested, and that offer still stands. So all that is part of that relationship to build trust and confidence, to then build the policing legitimacy that empowers the police to do the work that they are doing on behalf of the communities. Sorry, I can give a very long lecture on this, but I'm going to keep it short and I'll finish there.
All right, that was really comprehensive and interesting answer. So my second question is, as we all know, you are a high-profile figure, and due to this part, your life may involve a lot of ups and downs. So my question is, how do you organize, plan, and prioritize your workload in daily life? And how do you create a balance in your work life and practical life?
Okay, thank you. That is the question that I'm trying to answer myself, not very successfully. So if I just give you an example, at the moment, I have not taken much time off over the last 2 years. I'm actually owed over 600 hours of leave, and I've done, on top of my normal working hours, I've done 700 extra hours, which I'm not even counting into my leave and other things, because part of me, I'm very passionate about what I do, but I'm also very grateful for what I do, and I'm grateful to the introduction of the staff, which made me look like better than I am as a human being. But I'm so thankful that I am able to do this job and make, do my service to people and communities. And I have communicated that to my family as well. And my family understands that I am actually somebody who is committed to policing. And if I'm not doing policing, then I'm doing charity work. If I'm not doing charity work, then I'm doing youth work. If I'm not, I'm doing some community work. So I've been told that I need to sort that issue out for myself because it's not a good thing. So I'm going to learn now in the future. Maybe I'm 27 years now into policing. I'm not sure whether I've left it too late, but hopefully for the last few years of my service, I just need to find a better balance for myself in terms of my work life. But I finish with a quote that if you love what you do, you never have to work a single day in your life. And I love what I do. And I don't consider what I do as work. I do it because it's pleasure. And for that reason, I'm not bothered. I'm carrying over 1,000 hours. But if somebody doesn't know me at work, I'll probably just put all that leave in and take 4 months off.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that, couldn't get off mute there. Great answer again. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions. I know Dion has a very interesting question that she'd like to put to you, a third question, haven't you, Dion? So would you like to put your question to Umar?
Yeah, I can. Hang on, which question are you talking about? I've got 2 more.
Go with both of them. Go with the first and we'll do the second as well.
Okay, I'll do both. According to official records, in 2019, there were 268 deaths linked with drug poisoning. What are you intending to do about the drug problem in Greater Manchester?
Thank you for that question. Substance misuse and drugs misuse is a significant problem across all of society. We've seen different forms of drugs come into the marketplace, So we see what people term as recreational drugs, you know, from cannabis and, you know, alcohol and other things, which young people would sometimes in their life experiment with. But then we've seen the more hardcore drugs, the class A's types from cocaine to heroin. But also over the last few years, we've seen the creation of new types of drugs, which are such as like spice and, you know, a whole manner of different things which people take either for, you know, and for example, some of our recent deaths and trends have been around illegal uses of pregabalins and, you know, like diazepams, trazepams, all these drugs which are being sold on the black market as a form of combination that people are using as misuse. So a lot of the overdoses have been around that area. So what we've got across Greater Manchester is that we've got the boring bit is that we've got a drug and substance misuse policy and strategy in place, which means that police, local authorities, public health are part of that. Because of my role in criminal justice and custody, one of the new things that we've done in Greater Manchester, for which I am the chair of, is the early warning system. And the early warning system is that if the police or public health or A&Es or doctors pick up overdoses of drugs, either by young or older people, we bring it to the attention of our group, which is the early warning system, and we do a thorough investigation to find out what the instance was, where the drugs were, what the toxicology reports were, and if we've got any samples, we'll get them tested. And we'll get them tested to make sure that we can get warnings out across the public health system to ensure that all the professionals are warned about it. In terms of relevance to the group here, the members in the college, is that as you're growing older, you will be tempted or invited or encouraged to sample different forms of drugs. And it's not my place to be lecturing people and say you shouldn't and shouldn't do that, but it's a choice that you will have to make for yourselves, because some of yourselves may have already made those choices. What I will say is that that short-term pleasure or buzz or whatever people want as their motive for taking recreational drugs has a significant detrimental harm in the long term. I've seen those harms. I've seen people with mental health issues in the long term. I've seen people who have become homeless because of their drug dependency. I've seen people who have been incarcerated in prisons. I've seen people from my own school that I've been to. Many of them have ended up in the criminal justice system because of drug dependency. So remember, the addiction is something, once you become addicted to something, it becomes out of your control then, and it takes great willpower and something to bring you back into normality. And the best advice I can give to anybody is, whether it's cigarettes, whether it is cannabis, whether it is alcohol, is the best prevention, and not taking it in the first place is the best advice I can give to people. You know, people say, how do you give up this? Well, don't get started. So if you're able to now stop and think about yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years time, you will be so grateful. Your 30-year-old self and your 40-year-old self and your 50-year-old self will be so thankful that the younger you made that decision to say no. So that's kind of like where I'll conclude with that first question.
Are you happy with that, Dion?
Not really. I would like a follow-up question, if that's okay.
All right.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're saying about the drug use and stuff, and the prevention of it, but what about the things that are happening now in an extent of the drug dealing that's going on? Because personally, I can say that I know for a fact there are people on my street that are dealing, and we've gone to the police and they have said, oh, well, never mind. They haven't really done anything about it. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I personally wouldn't say that's what we expect the police to say in response to instances of crime and criminality. What I will do is that if you had that specific experience, I'm more than happy if you want to email me directly, and I will raise that with the local team in that area to ensure that we do follow up, because we do not condone drug dealing, and drug dealing in itself does harm, and we have regularly operations in different parts of Greater Manchester where we target drug dealers. So our enforcement is one part of the overall plan, and I use this term called the EPIC plan. So the EPIC plan is around enforcement, which is what the police will do with the partners. Prevention is what I'm saying is that if people don't buy the drugs, then there's no drug dealers to sell the drugs. And then there's the intelligence, which is the information flow, which is what you're saying around what happens where in the communities. And we do need people to report that to us. And that is done through either contacting the police or Crime Stoppers if you want to do it anonymously. And those numbers are available out there. And the third bit is around the communication aspect, which is the bit, I guess, what we're doing today is communicating some of that, and that's publicizing those options. So enforcement, prevention, intelligence, information, communication is what it makes my sort of plan when I was a neighborhood inspector in those areas. And so I'm sorry that you've had those experiences, but do drop me a line if you want me to follow that up for you specifically.
I will, thank you, Umar.
Okay. We've had a question come in about the public health crisis and whether that has altered the way you've had to conduct community policing, you know, in view of COVID and the public health crisis that's been ongoing since March of last year.
Yeah, and that links in with the question that was asked around, you know, the contrast between traditional policing and community policing. And we know that our policing confidence and legitimacy has been challenged by our public because of the public health crisis. The public health crisis brought in a number of restrictions, the lockdowns and different elements. And we know that significant parts of the society has not agreed to it. And as a consequence, we as the police are being caught in the middle of public health crisis on the one hand, government legislation around lockdown and restrictions, and then segments of our public saying, actually, we don't agree with this. Nobody should tell us that we can't go out or we can't meet or we can't do this. So it's been a real challenge for ourselves as a police service. But in Greater Manchester Police, we took what we call a 4 E's approach. So the 4 E's approach is around the fact that if we found somebody who was contravening the public health restriction guidance, the first thing we would do is to explain to those people what the current guidance and restrictions are, and then engage with those people to say, listen, that this is what the guidance is. We want you to stop what you're doing. It's not helpful. Either go home or let these people leave and we'll just leave it to there. And then encourage them, which is the third bit, to say, look, if you don't follow the guidance, unfortunately, you're going to be subject to enforcement. And then the last E is the enforcement, and that's where they will get fixed penalties and other instances. So our actual issuance of fixed penalties through the COVID restrictions has been very, very low compared to the overall incidence. And in fact, if anything, we've been criticised by the Home Office and the government for not issuing enough fixed penalties. But part of that has been because we as Greater Manchester Police have been keen not to lose the trust and confidence of our public whilst we're doing that enforcement, because it's not been welcomed. So it's been a really, really difficult challenge for us throughout in the last year and a half, and that goes against that trust, confidence and legitimacy of policing as part of society. I hope that kind of gives you a flavour of the challenges.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I wonder now if I could just say a great thank you to you from all of our students, and I'd like to hand back to our Deputy Principal Carmen to say a last few words of thanks to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Michelle. Well, I'm going to echo Michelle's comment on thanking our students, and I'm going to start by thanking our students. I have been really impressed by, you know, your understanding of the current issues affecting society and young people, and you know, and how you've been able to put that into the context of the role that Umar does. So thank you very much for that. I know that's been very clever questions, very insightful, great variety in there. So thank you very much. That has been really great. It's been the best job of the week so far. It's been absolutely delightful too. So thank you very much to you all. And then of course, thank you very much to our guests. And I have been you know, humbled by the great story, not just a personal story, but also of course your professional story, your commitment to, you know, to society, to the issues, and really inspired by how, you know, by your resilience as a human being as well. And I hope that the students have definitely learned a lot from you today, and I really do hope that our students have learned a lot too. You know, it's not you know, it's, you know, someone with your experience and the breadth of experience and cross-cultural experiences is absolutely fantastic. So I want to thank you again for our time. We are very grateful that you've made the time into your busy schedule, and hopefully we'll continue to support the of course the We Stand Together campaign. We just want to see, I look forward to see what our students, you know, the suggestions from our students of how we can continue to promote and support that. And of course, I am very confident that we're going to be working together in some capacities. So thank you. And of course, I want to say thank you to Michelle, who has worked on this event for very long time, and who has put an enormous amount of time, you know, supporting our students and making the arrangements. She's the silent hero in the corner. She's the one that makes it all happen. So thank you very much. Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you. You are so humble. You never take any credit for all the great things that you do. So thank you very much indeed. And that's it from me, really.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess it probably needs just me to just finish off with a little bit. I'm grateful for the warm and the kind words. I am absolutely proud of the students at Trafford College Groups. You are amazing young people. Your intelligence and your questioning is way beyond what I would expect young people to have that grasp of understanding, really. So I'm really proud, and I was nowhere near anywhere at that level when I passed through Trafford College. You know, when I did my English lessons, I just wanted to add that. So the reason why Trafford College Group is very close to my heart is that when I first came into the country and I lived in Old Trafford, I went to the Greystone High School, which is just across where the PC World is, and I came to Trafford College for some English lessons. And then later on in my career, when I was working at Megaball in White City, I used to come for evening classes. So you guys are amazing. So please take that forward with yourselves in your lives. And this is from somebody who went through the doorsteps of the Trafford College Group. I've done some courses at South Trafford College as well, albeit they were about car mechanics and stuff, really. But the fact is that you are in a great place and a great institution. Embrace the diversity that you've got around yourselves. These are the best years of your life. And you know, you got people that you can learn from. You got people who are different to yourselves. Don't just be in your little cliques and your little groups. Go and reach out and speak to somebody you've never spoken to. Go and speak to somebody who's different to you, from a different background, from a different ethnicity, from a different faith. And that's what We Stand Together is all about. It's about celebrating our difference that exists. And that difference has made me the person that I am. I'm absolutely proud of it. And that's why I'm committed to doing the things that I'm doing, because I've been given so much by that diversity, that love and the care of the teaching staff here and other people who made me the person that I am. So on that note, thank you very much to all. And sorry about the issues at the start, but hopefully in the future we'll not have them. Now we have had an experience. So over to you, Michelle.
Okay, thanks. For what a huge commendation for all of our students and our former student, our alumni. You know, we're so proud to have you as our alumni. And you know, I'm sure I'll be knocking on your door for lots of other events in the future. So thank you, and thank you for being so forthright with your answers and direct. And thank you to our students again for all the commitment that they've shown and putting their questions together and turning up for practice meetings. It's a labour of love for me. So I'll just call it quits there, and thank you everybody for attending, and we look forward to our next event where we can join together again and #WeStandTogether. Thank you.
Right, have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.